was the third or the fourth person that I had caught him talking to. And I was just like, I'm just so tired of this, and ended the relationship. And in ending that relationship, so with trauma bonding, it is it is very addictive, um, in the sense of it feeds you those happy chemicals that your brain needs, that dopamine and cortisol and all of those things. And so when I cut it cold turkey. Um, like one Friday night was like, I'm going to my mom's house, and left and called him, broke up with him the next day and told him he had to be out by the next Tuesday. And I didn't go home until that Tuesday once he had moved out. And that was extremely hard because then I started with the withdrawal process. So my name is Whitney. I have been through a long line of abuse and different things, and have found that that has been an addictive pattern for me. And even just some of the different things behind abuse, and how it can cause you to form addictions, and what those addictions look like and how to break them, and also how it can affect your mental health and battling mental illness with it as well.
Yeah. So earlier we were talking about that, and you started to go into kind of some of these cycles. I would be curious to hear, kind of some of that cycle of relationship addiction and what you walked through, and maybe some similarities in that.
Oh yeah. So growing up, my household, my father was verbally and psychologically abusive. There's no way to be around that. Unfortunately, I have worked and rebuilt a relationship with him, and spend time with him, which is great. But the fact that he is the catalyst or the base for my cycles is fact. And so I just learned last week. We were talking about just different, our struggles within our group therapy session, and I said it was based around men, and they said what man in particular, and we kind of started going backwards, and that's when I identified it was my father. And as a child, I always wanted to be daddy's little girl. Like I wanted to have that life where I felt safe and protected by my dad, was daddy's little girl, and that type of thing. And unfortunately, I didn't feel that. I know he tried very hard and he did what he thought was best, but for me, it didn't correlate. And, it was pretty toxic. And so then as dating relationships go on, that is what I look for. I look for a man that can make me feel safe and be a protector. And I want them to give me attention and that type of thing. And so when I find somebody that I feel like I connect with, a lot of times it tends to be men that aren't necessarily available, or, they have commitment issues or just those different things. And the ones that are available and don't have commitment issues, I tend to push those away. And so that's just part of that cycle where I feel more comfortable in a toxic or a chaotic pattern in a relationship than I do with somebody that actually does make me feel safe and would start connecting and be there, because of the abuse that I've grown up in. That's how I've learned to regulate, and that's what I feel comfortable in. And so I'm trying to readapt my brain, to not follow that cycle anymore, and to see somebody being available and being there as good and desirable or appropriate for a relationship.
Yeah. So what have you learned in that? Because it's interesting. We hearing that, like, this toxic relationship, with dad early on was harmful for you, right? Mentally and whatnot. But yet, what is it that causes us to search for that? You know what I'm saying? Because we kind of realize that like this wasn't great for me, but yet there's this cycle that causes us to look for that in new relationships, like you mentioned. And do you know what the connection is there?
The biggest thing that comes to my mind is trauma bond. I've learned to survive in a trauma bond. So to me, the cycle, so with trauma bonding, what they'll do is it's like they love bomb you. They are, they're there, there's consistency, they show you a good side of them, it shows you all these things, and then something will happen, an event, something like that, and it'll flip, and they'll be abusive verbally, psychologically, manipulative, just those typical patterns of abuse for any person. And it's like this back and forth with them. And so you're like, well, I've already seen the good. I know what the good can be, and I know what I want, and I've already put so much time. And so you start to get in this cycle where it's just repeating that back and forth of the up and down. And so trauma bonding for me is very easy. I'm very quickly bonded. Like I'm easy, like I will bond to someone very quickly. And if they push me away, then I'm like, oh, they want me more, because that's what I think the cycle, that's how I think that cycle should go.
So is there a desire in you when you're dealing with that, maybe after you see the good, then the flashes of the bad, like to try to fix the person? Are you dealing with any of that, or you just kind of, this is just a flash, this is only going to last for a little bit, and then the good person will come back out a little bit down the road?
It's a mix of both. Definitely a mix of both. So you think you want to help them, but then also, I know who they can be. Don't fall in love with potential is what I hear a lot. And that is what you think, like, I'm going to be able to help bring this person. Like, I know how great they can be. Let me help them get there. And, I'm a survivor of abuse. I have been so strong. I've recovered for so much. Let me help them. Let me help them. And really, they're just pushing you away.
Yeah. Wow. So that cycle for you, I mean, what did that look like? I mean, what was the, I guess the journey of self-discovery to kind of realize that you were in this cycle, and then maybe some of the steps that you started to take? And it sounds like you're still actively working on this. And I know that's one of the things we talk about with recovery, that it's ongoing. We're constantly working. We're constantly on facing these battles. But what did that look like for you, and kind of recognizing the cycle first and then starting to get some healing?
So I knew, just based off just past patterns in life, that I lean towards addictive behavior, whether that be fitness or just try anything that I get attached to in that moment. I go full force, hard, like 100% of the time. And so I got into this relationship in 2020, and it was very toxic. And we went through all kinds of up and downs, lots of catching him talking with other women, and just different. It's a lot of different things. There's stuff still that my mind doesn't let me know. It's kind of suppressed because it was just so traumatic. And I even went through therapy while I was with him and tried to get him into therapy, like thinking we could fix things. And I lied a lot, suppressed a lot, ignored the red flags, that kind of stuff, because I wanted to stay in this. And so finally, in August of 2021, I got so tired. I think it was the third or the fourth person that I had caught him talking to. And I was just like, I'm just so tired of this, and ended the relationship. And in ending that relationship, so with trauma bonding, it is very addictive, in the sense of it feeds you those happy chemicals that your brain needs, that dopamine and cortisol and all of those things. And so when I cut it cold turkey. Like, one Friday night was like, I'm going to my mom's house, and left and called him, broke up with him the next day, and told him he had to be out by the next Tuesday. And I didn't go home until that Tuesday, once he had moved out. And that was extremely hard, because then I started with the withdrawal process of addiction, which, even though it wasn't a chemical substance, so it may not physically look exactly the same as chemical dependency withdrawal, it was very much withdrawal. Would wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, shaking, crying so hard I wasn't making noise. I would have to call my mom And sometimes I couldn't even like get words out that were audible. And she would just start praying for me and start bringing me back down, so that I could ground myself. And so that started happening as soon as I went back into that house, which a lot of abuse happened in that house. And so we knew I had to contact my employer and be like, look, I need to move. I need to move to a different office. I need to move closer to my family, which was almost an hour away from where I was. And I'm not safe. And so thankfully, my employer at the time was just phenomenal, and they let me relocate. And pretty much within a week or two, I had relocated, was living back with family. But it really started to, that whole doing this really opened up a huge, I guess it was eye-opening. That's how I'll say it. So it was a big eye-opening experience that led me down a road to begin to discover not only my struggles with addictions, but my battle with mental health, and establishing that I do have mental illness and how to cope with all of that. When I got back with family, I was still having the panic attacks. If I would go to that house to try to pack up to move or anything like that, I would get triggered. And it was a very, very rocky time. And I started to have intrusive thoughts and wanting to harm myself and take my own life. And I remember I was sitting in my mom's living room and I was just sobbing, and I was like, Mom, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to ask for help. If I had a chemical addiction, with drugs or alcohol, like I could go to rehab, but where do I go to rehab from addiction to another human? Like I literally remember saying those words. Where do I go? And thankfully, I got in with a therapist, and they advised me to go self-admit into at the ER into behavioral health, which a lot of people deem the psych ward, which has a lot of negative connotation. But ultimately, that was the best thing that I ever did. It saved my life. God was with me every step of the way. He showed me he was with me every step of the way. And it is what has helped me get to where I am today, to recover from the addiction to another human and being trauma bonded, but then also to get established in my own identity, who I am in Christ, but then also starting the journey on healing and managing my mental illness.